our newest member. Reverend Carol is joining us. And we will be transcribing as well. Okay, so welcome. As always, we're going to ask you to sign in to the for today's meeting. There is a spreadsheet coming. To everyone. There you go. So please sign in with your name, affiliation, all of that good stuff. Appreciate that. And so this is our agenda for today. We're going to start the roll call co-leads report back. That will be Nicole. We're going to do a bit on the community engagement plan update, and then we're going to spend a significant amount of the meeting going over a general plan update from both the city and Deeply Rooted, the community engagement group, and then we'll wrap it up hopefully right about 8 o'clock. All righty. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Thumbs up.
Really good.
Good answer. Good answer. Good answer. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to get started with Nicole from WOCAP and a report, co-leads report back. Oh, actually, we didn't get a welcome from from our co-leads. Are you going to do that, or do we have one of the leadership?
So just move on.
Okay.
Henry,
So,
let's move on.
all right, Nicole.
Welcome everyone. Can you believe it's May, or is this just me reflecting in a group setting? Okay, and welcome. May the 4th be with you. I'm hoping that lands. Tough crowd, hard to read. Okay, so I'm going to start with the truck planning update. Perfect, thank you, Randall. So the plan was approved by the city and port in April 2019. The plan has 10 strategies. Here's the update. So the proposed truck route designations for frontage road is currently on hold, okay, pending additional community processes. The city council adopted the truck parking regulations on April 19th of this year. The city is working on the truck parking sign installation plan and an educational and outreach campaign for truck operators, as well as targeted enforcement to implement the new rules. Okay, so I just want to update folks on that. Next slide, please.
All right. We want to move on to our new member.
I do. So before I introduce the esteemed Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll, I want to just quickly walk through the process of his recruitment, which we're extremely grateful and excited that he's joining, right? So Miss Margaret reached out to him, right? Formed and fostered that relationship, right? The steering committee interest form was sent to Reverend Carroll, right? He and I had.
It's supposed to be physical, you know, everybody's going to compete, everybody's going to fight for own their players follow.
Oh, thank you.
I had an initial conversation about his intention and gave him the background of WOCAP, right? He was still interested and very excited. So he and I had another conversation, and it was essentially a just information session about the logistics and the intention of the steering committee, right, and its goals. And worked with him on the presentation that he has, and just the alignment with his work and his values in terms of WOCAP, right? And we're really excited to hear his presentation. So a little bit about Reverend Carroll, right? He's not only active in the Bay Area, right, but a founder of Green the Church, okay, which encourages African-American congregations to commit to an environmental theology that promotes sustainable practices and helps build economic and political change. So without further ado, Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Again, so very glad to be here today, and just glad for the opportunity to serve. Really appreciate Miss Margaret and all of her work, and to know her is both a joy and an occupation. You got to get with it. Amen. So very glad to be here. I am a West Oakland. I reside in West Oakland, grew up in East Oakland, an Oakland High graduate, 1987. I've been a West Oakland resident several times in my life. Worked on the Adeline Maintenance Center with community members back in 1998. My mom taught at Prescott Elementary growing up, and again, very concerned with not only with the air quality, but quality of life, of gentrification. There's so much rich history here for people and citizens of Oakland of all lights. And again, glad to be here tonight. I was actually ordained at the Beth Eden Baptist Church in West Oakland, and would that you would send kind thoughts. The gentleman who ordained me and pastored for over 40 years, Dr. Gilletto James, passed away on Sunday. And so that congregation is in my thoughts on today. Let's see, I've got probably about 6 minutes left. Just want to run through this for a minute. Green the Church is the organization that we founded. If you go to the next slide there. Founded by my brothers and sisters and I. Our dad pastored the Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Oakland on 23rd Avenue for years, and two of my brothers and one of my sisters were all clergy, some in Louisiana, Florida, and I'm still here holding it down in the West. But we have an organization called Carroll Ministries International that we started in 1997, doing a lot of treks back to the South, really looking at Christian education, but African-American history and things of that nature. Next slide. In 2009, I became a Green for All Fellow with Van Jones, and began to learn about issues, not only environmental justice, but food sovereignty, building efficiency, renewable energy, and the like, and was just a fantastic opportunity to be a part of that cohort. I was actually in Colorado at the time. Next slide, yes. And at Green for All, we had a lot of people of color, but not a lot of people who were, involved in church or Western religion. And then I found an organization called Interfaith Power and Light, also founded here in the Bay Area by Canon Sally Bingham, the Episcopal Church in San Francisco. And in that organization, I found people of faith, but not a lot of people of color. And so we decided to bring those two worlds together. Next slide. And start Green the Church in 2010 to wake up the sleeping giant that is the African-American church on issues of environmentalism and sustainability. Our three pillars are to amplify green liberation theology, promote sustainable practices, and building power for political and economic change. Next slide. This organization, again, this is a bit about our vision and mission. I think we can go to the next slide. Hey, man, I'm trying not to give you all a Baptist sermon tonight. I'll try to make it Episcopalian. All right.
Lutheran even.
We started doing these Green the Church summits we decided that if we were going to bring the African American church on these issues, we had to bring the community in. We had to, begin to talk about what's going on around us. And we've done this in Chicago, Illinois, at Trinity United Church of Christ, which is the church where President Obama was, Charlotte, North Carolina, St. Louis, Missouri. But we started it here in West Oakland. Our first summit was at the St. John Baptist Church on Market, right here in West Oakland, bringing with the Baptist Ministers Union of Oakland and vicinity, because we know that if these things are going to move, we have to be in the communities that are hit first and worst by climate change. And that was in, I think, 2013 or so. We were back. This is at Glad Tidings Church of God in Christ in Hayward, California. And every time we come together, we make sure that it is an interdenominational and interfaith gathering. Next slide. So I took this from a piece that we're doing, talking about the benefits of congregational memberships, because we want all of our congregations to be a part of this. And when the congregations come in, we make sure that they have green teams. Next slide, yeah. And so as associate congregations, we make sure that we start educating them, and we make sure that every congregation has a green team. I say if congregations can have an usher board, a choir, a praise team, that your congregation should have a green team. So we talk about building efficiency. I often say African Americans don't own a lot of skyscrapers downtown, but we own a lot of faith buildings. And that's true. A lot of people in our communities, they're the one thing that as a community we own, and all of those buildings have to be retrofitted. And we talk in church about stewardship. So peak efficiency, we talk about renewable energy. Right now we have about 3 or 4 churches that we have helped and are helping go solar. Next slide. Food sovereignty. We believe that we should be growing food on church-owned land. Environmental justice, what brings us here today as we talk about all of the injustices that are afforded certain communities, that we want to make sure that we aggregate and come together, speak truth to power, and be a part of the fights that the communities are fighting for, as well as disaster preparedness. I will say that after our first summit, of course, we had the No Coal in Oakland piece, and some of our clergy, were being stirred in different directions. And so we had to have those hard conversations, even when it came to, conversations about jobs. People may show you a little cash, but we had to have some real, come to Jesus moments, if you will, about what that means for the community. And interestingly enough, it was not necessarily church leadership, but it was the people who live in West Oakland, who live in these areas, who stood up. And I think making space for those conversations is important. And so we pay attention to what's going on nationally. Next slide. I'm almost done. And then, of course, we have opportunities for, congregations. We have very small congregations in our communities, and we have very large congregations as well. Our summit, I see some of my slides are gone. Our summit this year will be at the Allen Temple Baptist Church, October 8th through the 12th. And we're doing our national summit here in Oakland. And again, we want to make sure that we highlight all of the things that are going on and pay attention to what are the environmental injustices that we really want to rally. So these are some things that we do, and Green the Church is a national organization. And that's my time. God bless you. Glad to be here.
Hey, Pastor, have you done this before? So for all of the steering committee or prospective steering committees to come, the Reverend Pastor Carroll has set the bar for you. So we're gonna make sure that yours looks like that. That was very impressive. Thank you, sir. And building out this steering committee in this manner that we are is really exciting. And so with that, we're going to move to the community engagement. So we've had a subgroup or a working group of the co-leads that has been meeting over the last couple of months just to talk about community engagement. And we have a more fulsome kind of community engagement framework that we're working on. It's very detailed. What we've been trying to do is to kind of dig into each individual section of it and not kind of do a cursory, kind of cookie cutter community engagement plan. And so we'll be sharing bits and pieces of that with you over the next coming months. But really just wanted to start with the goals and objectives, and that is to increase and maintain high levels of participation from West Oakland residents specifically, along with businesses, organizations, and to increase their participation on the WOCAP steering committee. So over the last couple of months, we've had a couple of additions. And what we did is we started with re-engaging folks, and some of this we have kind of discussed in part over the last months at steering committee. But what we did was started by re-engaging folks that had been a part of the steering committee and had been a part of the process before. So we started by re-engaging them before we go on to do outreach to bring on more folks. Just the schedule kind of looks like that. We kicked off this work in, like a couple of months ago, in March-ish. This is the next month's leading up to a break in December. It's going to be an ongoing nomination process for new steering committee members. We do have some orientations and environmental justice training programs for SC members coming up in the next months, and we'll do a couple of those. There will be a confirmation of those members, and so whoever we have up to that point, there will be a confirmation. There's a few pieces of the puzzle that we are we have yet to sort out. We really want to have, we want to support the steering committee members in the work that they're doing. And so there will be some capacity building measures that we undertake with the steering committee members to support not only their participation on the steering committee members, but possibly also on implementation projects. So that's to be determined. There have been in the past, and there will be again, community town halls to share information with folks, and also as a recruitment tool. And so those have yet to be scheduled. And then there is a push to get more young people and youth broadly defined. And for us, we have bifurcated youth as kind of high school age youth, and then that under 30 crowd. For, like I say, for many, like everybody is a youth to me. And so we've kind of broken that up. And then the implementation projects actually have been, kind of going in some way, and those will be ongoing. And then of course, when we get through with the community engagement planning process, we're going to just launch a more official information and communication outreach strategy. So that's the tentative schedule. One of the first things that we did was just to kind of revamp some of the information that we have. And that was a one-page flyer, I believe, that you all that was shared. Nicole shared that out to the group. And this is the first flyer. And the purpose of this one was, one, for steering committee orientation, and two, just as a general outreach tool. And so we're going to be looking a little bit more at this this evening. And if you have any feedback, like you can kind of just comment, you can put it in the chat if you like, or you can share it in the comments or when it's time to comment on it. But this is like kind of a general, oh, it's backwards. Sorry about that. Page 1, page 2. There we go. So we'll get a little bit of feedback on that. Actually, we can do that now. How about we do that now? So did everybody get a chance to look at it, or anybody? I'll pull it up. I'll pull up a larger version there. This logo one. So this is, we wanted to just break down, like everything begins and ends with the environmental justice movement and the principles of EJ. And so we wanted to start with that, going back to that initial conference in 1991, which our esteemed Miss Margaret was a part of. And there's a reference to that. A lot of this goes back to redlining and why West Oakland needed an air plan. Because of those principles, it also kind of manifested itself in kind of poor air quality and some of those kind of health hazards, which then precipitated the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in 2019 adopting Owning Our Air. And so that's where that came from, and the 89 principles. So then we went into the West Oakland Community Action Plan, which was a partnership of WOCAP and BACMed, the Community Air Protection Plan. This is, the implementation projects is something, or let me just say this, through the realignment process that we went through for those few months, a few months ago, we came out with a new organizational chart to show who was doing what and how and what those relationships were. Again, all built on equity strategies and kind of guided by the city of Oakland's equity plan from the city, from the Office of Race and Equity. Then, of course, we've got some information on WOCAP and some links and resources. So that is, yeah, some links and resources. So you all have this document, and if you have any comments now, you can share them with us. Are there any, does anybody want to just throw a couple of comments out there? Any initial reactions? All right, as I say, don't everybody speak at once. All righty. Okay, Laura.
I was going to say, I thought it was a great piece for me to share around. I sent it to our port staff air quality team because it's a great informational piece. And so maybe more of a comment and double up as a question. I would suggest for everybody to share it amongst their network as well. It's a great primer, but there's lots of links to read in depth, like the reports and lots of data, data we should all be using in our work. And then question is, how will you, I'm sure you have plans to get it out to a wider, audience. And I would suggest so, just because everybody really responded well to it.
Yes. So we've, okay, we've got some agreement there. Excited to share. Francis needs access. Yes. To this document, if we can share it, and we're also going to come up with a final version, which will really be the one. So we're just kind of getting feedback on it right now, and then we'll have the final that we can share out broadly to the public. So any other comments? Great.
Miss Margaret.
Miss Margaret?
Yes, I do. I think that we missed a piece about how AB 617 came about through the state of California.
Okay.
And we missed that piece.
Okay. Got it.
And I agree with Alicia that maybe some wins should have been put on there.
I was just about to say, Alicia said we should put some wins on there. Okay, you know, when we say our one pager is 2 pages, right? And so you see we have very limited real estate here, but at AB 617.
Also, I have a question. My question is, I see people on the chat asking for copies of it, copies of this, but this is pertaining to West Oakland. So why would you need a copy of it if it's not doing work in West Oakland?
I think people were just, I believe, just wanting to share it to
Hi,
networks.
Hi, Miss Margaret. That was me. This is Francis. I'm so sorry. I'm very new to these meetings, to these steering committee meetings, and the host just mentioned that it was available to everyone. So I wasn't caught up with that this is just a draft and that it's not actually for the public. So my apologies. I'm not supposed to have a copy of this document.
But
You can have a copy of it. I'm just interested because we don't have. Well, let me say this. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Francis, like you just said, you're new, and we haven't had no conversation about how the West Oakland Air Quality Project of Open Oakland is being engaged in the West Oakland Community Action Plan.
okay, so first we'll kind of put a bow on all of this, and then once we have, that portion of the community engagement plan, the distribution piece, like everybody will be informed. Good. Awesome. Thank you kindly. All right. Let's see here. Moving on. Okay, so as we move on, we will be creating additional, like, kind of a la carte documents on different topics. And we may have one on the implementation plan. We may have, or the implementation projects rather, and just different documents. And so we would like to hear from, the body, if there are other kind of like tidbits or primers that you think would be helpful to have to be able to share around the different aspects of the WOCAP, of the work that we're doing. And so any additional one-page documents that you think might be helpful, you can please share those. Let's see if we've got any additional. Oh, other languages. That's a good idea. We will bring that back to the work group. So again, when we have our full kind of community engagement framework or outline defined, we will add the idea of translation to that conversation. Kevin says AB 617 should be. Great. Okay, so
Randolph, it looks like some people are willing to read it and give you comments afterwards. Do we want to set a deadline for when they need to get you comments by?
yes, maybe next week. And
What day next week?
By the end of next week, by next Friday. And you can send them to me directly at All right. Great. So there's my email, and you can send any comments, edits to me directly. So again, we went back, re-engaged folks who had been engaged before, and now we're moving forward, right? So now we have some new steering committee members, and one time before at a steering committee member, we actually did some breakouts and we shared in an exercise. In one of the breakouts, we did an exercise where we were soliciting names. And so we need to continue that process. And what I'm going to do is kind of share the spreadsheet. This one is a shared doc, which can be edited. And I'll just ask, is there anybody who doesn't know how to use Excel? Is there anybody? Because if you do not, you're gonna need to find some supervision before you go into our document. We just need you to add rows, add names. So we've got some names confirmed in red. These are the categories. All right. We would like you to know who is, please put your name and contact information here, who suggested it, and why this nominated is well suited to participate in the steering committee. So we've got some holes: parent, schools, school boards, affordable, nonprofit housing. We've got some suggestions, but if you have more, please add rows and add names. Nonprofit organizations, of course, this is a collaborative of nonprofits, and so multiple names may come out of there. But if you have others, there's the youth, public health agencies. We've got some suggestions: transportation agencies, and then federal agencies. And so I'm going to put this in the so that is the spreadsheet. So please copy that, and you can add any names there, and then we'll fold them into, we'll actually do some due diligence, and then we will kind of do some, Nicole will actually be vetting some of those suggestions, and then we'll be reaching out to them. All right. We are moving right along. Any quick questions? How you doing, Miss Margaret?
Fine, thank
Anything
you.
else?
Under Caltrans, we have somebody for Caltrans already. That's
Transportation, Caltrans, Kevin.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
There's
I just
Kevin.
noticed, yeah, my name is misspelled there, but
Oh yeah, I knew. Okay. Yes, we got a K. And
Excuse me.
hold on just a sec. So Kevin is now red.
Yes.
Yes, gotcha. Sorry, we missed that, Kevin.
oh, no problem.
Okay, Charles.
Yeah. Although Kevin is with Caltrans, he only represents a certain part of Caltrans, and I was hoping that since they have a homeless a department at Caltrans now, that they would be involved in the environmental impact of the unhoused residential crisis.
So
I can reach out to our hazard, our homeless outreach person and see if they are interested in becoming a part of it, or going to the meetings, or attending, or I can handle that and reach out.
Appreciate that, Kevin.
Sure.
And so there's also a notes section. And so what are we doing? We're investigating homeless services within Caltrans.
Air quality,
Oh, I'm sorry.
the issue of air quality.
Okay. Got it. Any additional? I see some folks in there. Any additional questions of what the objective of this is?
I have a question. I apologize if this is stupid, but
Nope, no stupid
do
question.
we need to add our name if we want to just keep coming, but not as an official steering committee member?
This is actually specifically for steering committee recruitment that we'll be vetting these names for. And so if you are on the, I'm just going to say that if you're on the mailing list, if you're getting the announcements, you can continue to participate as a member of the public.
Okay, thanks.
Others? And so actually one other thing we want to do is so what, again, we want to increase, as this says, we want to increase and maintain high levels of participation from West Oakland residents, businesses, and organizations on the WOCAP steering committee. And so this is the catchment area that we're looking at. And this is from page 28 of Owning Our Air. And so if you need this document, you can, or if you need this map, you can find that in the document. So yeah, bordered by the freeways, all of the freeways, and then a bit of that Emeryville border, and then all the way through the port. So that is our target area for identifying new members, new nominees for the steering committee. All right, any questions? All right, you guys got all the answers. Okay, that's our discussion. Great, we are not only on time, we're a little bit ahead of time. So we're gonna move on. We've got let's see, a substantial update on the report on the general plan update. And so we're gonna move there. Let's see here, who wants to take over the screen?
I will do it.
Okay. Great. Deanna from the city of Oakland is the city and the community engagement team from Deeply Rooted has been doing working on the general plan update, and as part of that they've also been meeting with the team from the co-leads, and so they have a update to their this to their prior presentation to the steering committee. Deanna?
Thanks, Randolph. Can you see my screen, the presentation?
We can.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia Parker, and I'm a planner in the Oakland Planning Department, Strategic Planning Division. And I'm joined tonight by Deanna and Kalila. And we're part of a team who are involved in preparing the Oakland General Plan. As Randolph mentioned, there is a consultant team that's also involved, part of whom involve West Oakland EIP. And Ms. Margaret, thank you for your involvement. And also, I think we have Diana Benitez also tonight. So thank you. So just to kind of preface what the plan, where we are in the phase, as Randolph mentioned, we've been here before. And so we're at the stage of the general planning process of visioning and goal setting, and also looking at the existing conditions. Next slide, please. So tonight we'd like to take you through an overview of the general plan. It's brief, but it's sort of helps to set the context. We're going to talk about the common goals between the WOCAP and the general plan and get a little feedback, hopefully, on that. We're going to talk about ways to uplift the WOCAP into the general plan, and then we're going to talk about some of the baseline conditions and specifically environmental justice data. And then we'll talk about ways to get involved. Next slide. Okay, so what is a general plan? The general plan is kind of a guiding document for the city, and it really sets the policies for development over the next 20 years. It's an opportunity to engage the community in the decision-making process, which is what we're hoping to do. And it was last updated over 20 years ago. So the policies that are in the general plan today are from the 90s. Just a little more on that. The general plan that exists today had sort of focus areas and showcase areas. So it really focused on downtown, focused on the Coliseum, focused on the sort of the waterfront. And so, and it also had kind of policies and vision statements for various neighborhoods. So that's kind of, that sort of frames the context. And as I mean, if you think about what happened in those years, you think about, the focus on downtown, which became, the 10K initiative and other initiatives that, came to fruition. So I say that to say that it's important that everybody who loves Oakland and who lives here and is invested here participates in this process. And then the other thing that is unique about this year, this time of updating the general plan, is that there will be a focus on racial justice and equity. We're striving to apply the principles of fair and just into the goals, policies, and implementation measures of the general plan. I'm a member of the Oakland Planning and Building Department Racial Equity Team, as is Deanna and Kalila. And so we're striving to not only apply equitable principles into the internal systems and processes, but also as we face community. So hoping you will help us keep accountable to that. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the general plan? So it's, again, as I mentioned, it governs the development and the development of property, including zoning. It talks about the location and types of housing, the number and types of jobs, how people get around, specifically with a focus on bicyclists, children, people with disabilities and seniors, pedestrians, the number and quality of parks, risks from hazards in terms of wildfires, earthquakes, natural hazards, and then natural and cultural resources. Next slide, please. Okay, and so, when we are out in community, we're asking people to think about, how they access services. Where's the pharmacy that they go to? Where do their children go to school? What are all of the things that kind of create the, network of support and the network of services for them? So thinking about what the community needs today and what they see it needing in the future, either for themselves as they begin to age or for their children as they, enter the workforce or whatever stage they're in. And so that this kind of speaks to this question of visioning and what we hope for Oakland and how it could be different in the future. Next slide, thank you. So there are several chapters or elements of the general plan that will all be updated in this early phase, which include the housing element, and that is has several kind of policies that involve protecting tenants, preserving the existing stock of affordable housing, producing more affordable housing, and identifies where housing will go. The safety element addresses hazards such as wildfire, earthquakes, climate change, flooding, and ways to reduce the impacts. The environmental justice, which Deanna will talk more about, addresses the needs of the most vulnerable. It includes, air quality, pollution, safe and sanitary housing, healthy food access, physical activity, and civic engagement. So it's very encompassing. And then the industrial lands vision will also happen at this time, at this phase, which will focus on really achieving those sustainable high road jobs. Next slide, please. And then there are a few other elements that will happen in the second phase of the planning process, which probably will begin 2023 and then extend on into 2025. And so those would include the open space element, the noise element, and then the land use and transportation element. Okay, and so there is, go ahead, next slide. A plan for community engagement that is multi-pronged, and we have a consultant team, a community consultant team that is a collaborative of several community-based organizations. It's led by Just Cities, and they're really striving, as all of us are in this engagement process, to work with and identify and engage historically marginalized communities, so working class communities, communities of color, unhoused, people with disabilities, seniors, formerly incarcerated youth, communities experiencing environmental injustices. And so one more thing here is that they have, as I mentioned, identified community-based organization throughout the city. And so we have, for example, the Black Cultural Zone, we have West Oakland EIP, and others, as you can see on the map, community-based organizations helping to engage around this issue of the general plan update. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is some bullets about the types of events that have happened. So there have been various community pop-up events and neighborhood workshops and town halls. And so, next slide. Okay, so at this part of the presentation, we wanted to talk about how we can, really start to get into the details and how do we elevate the WOCAP in the general plan process. And I think that there are kind of different levels to do that. One will be through identifying the kind of organizing goal of the West Oakland Community Action Plan and having that be extrapolated to apply citywide, perhaps. We have another slide on that. And then also looking at the strategies and having those become implementing actions of the general plan so that, and I have some more slides on that, and then I'm almost done. Next slide, please. So in terms of the common goal between the West Oakland Community Action Plan and the general plan, we've identified it to be protecting and improving community health by eliminating disparities in exposure to local air pollution. And so I think the question to the group is, do we all agree that that should be a citywide goal? And then we can take that a step further to say that we're really focused on eliminating disparities and reducing exposure for those who are most vulnerable. And then similar to how the West Oakland Community Action Plan has geographically specific emission reduction targets, would we want to have some, a similar model apply citywide? So that's, part of the exercise here when we talk about aligning the WOCAP with the general plan element. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, and so to get a little bit more detailed and a little more specific, we have identified various policy work that can also be potentially sort of extrapolated and applied citywide, which would include the general category and sort of guidance to minimize emission exposure, emissions exposure, to identify sites that are suitable for heavy industry, to enhance truck-related business regulations and mitigation measures, to address industrial business impacts, to embrace health promoting strategies and land use, including through the healthy development guidelines, and to potentially have more stringent air quality regulations for new development. And then in the next couple of slides, Deanna, if you want to go to the next slide. There are, again, the specific strategies in the West Oakland Community Action Plan that, again, we've tried to show how we can synthesize those up and apply them citywide. So again, we have the relocation of some of these heavy industrial businesses. We have the accelerated relocation of truck yards, truck-related businesses. Next slide, please. And then we have work around making our regulatory review of development more stringent, okay, which could include a fee for environmental mitigations or more stringent air quality construction standards and operation standards. And then again, implementing healthy development guidelines. And one last slide, which would include mitigations. So for example, requiring the solid or vegetated buffers, and then sort of to the point of civic engagement, the participatory budgeting. Okay, so that's sort of what we're, again, how we're trying to synthesize what's in the West Oakland Community Action Plan and apply it in the general plan. And I would say that the other piece is that we are planning to bring forward the industrial related zoning code amendments that we developed as part of this process with the general plan in the first phase, so that we, as we enter into conversations around industrial lands, we're not only setting the vision for industrial lands and the goals at a high level that we'll refine in phase 2, we're also setting up some basic protections, including a 500-foot buffer for truck attracting businesses and heavy industry near residential. Next slide.
All right. Thanks, Alicia. And so now we're getting to the point of the presentation where we get into Senate Bill 1000. So Senate Bill 1000, the Planning for Healthy Communities Act, was adopted in 2016, and it requires any city or county to adopt either a standalone environmental justice element or a set of EJ policies that can be integrated into the other elements if there are disadvantaged communities within the jurisdiction. And the city of Oakland has opted to pursue both options. So that is integrating EJ environmental justice into the policies, goals, and actions of all the other elements, and also to adopt a standalone environmental justice element as a way to emphasize the importance of environmental justice in the general plan. And so I'll just note that the state law SB 1000 uses the term environmental justice community, but the city of Oakland has opted to use the term environmental justice communities to recognize that environmental justice is both about identifying the problems in areas that are unfairly impacted or disadvantaged, but also about gaining equitable access to environmental benefits and investments and other resources for low-income communities. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to manage here the slides. So the first step in the environmental justice process is to identify environmental justice communities. And once environmental justice communities are identified, then the policies in the environmental justice element must reduce the unique or compounded health risks in these communities by decreasing pollution exposure, including improving air quality, and increasing community assets and overall health. So that is promoting safe and sanitary homes, promoting food access, promoting public facilities such as hospitals, libraries, community centers. And the environmental justice policies must also reduce barriers to inclusive engagement and participation of EJ communities in the public decision-making, public decision-making processes, as well as prioritize improvements in programs that benefit and meet the needs of EJ communities. So the state law provides 2 ways of identifying EJ communities. The first way is to uses the same definition of disadvantaged community that Cal EPA uses, which is the top 25% of highest scoring census tracts in Cal EnviroScreen. And the second definition, which is a low-income area that is disproportionately affected by environmental pollution and other hazards that can lead to negative health health effects, exposure, or environmental degradation. Really allows local governments the flexibility to define EJ communities based on local conditions and needs. The key here is identifying an area that is both low income and that is disproportionately impacted by environmental pollution. OPR, so there are a couple of different ways to, recommendations both from the CEJA's Senate Bill 1000 implementation toolkit and from the Office of Planning and Research around how to do a screening analysis. The Office of Planning and Research really recommends doing a sort of a thorough screening analysis to ensure that EJ communities are properly identified prior to beginning the planning process. And they recommend starting with Callan virus screen by using the census tracts that have Callan virus screen score of 75% of higher, and then adding on 2 different measures of household median income, which is like the statewide median income and the housing and community development state income definition for low income, and then to map on community specific or localized data that is relevant to the communities, and to identify where those disproportionate pollution burdens and risk factors are. And so I'm sorry you can't, the formatting is a little bit off, but the Oakland prepared a custom analysis so that we can better understand the disparities within the city according to the indicators that Oaklanders deem most relevant to their lived experience. And so going a little bit more into kind of what the purpose of the draft environmental justice community map is that we are presenting to you. Let me backtrack a little bit. Today we are presenting to you both like this draft process, the screening process to identify EJ communities, and a draft map, which is incomplete and imperfect, but just a starting place for a conversation about what's missing. And so, talking about the purpose of this draft EJ community map, it's really this process to identify EJ communities is a first step in the process. It's a basic building block for all other SB 1000 requirements. Because after completing the screening process to identify the location and the nature of the burdens and needs of EJ communities, the next step is to develop specific goals, objectives, and policies and implementation programs that are responsive to and prioritize the needs of EJ communities. The map and the descriptions of the pollution burden, the health impacts, and the community needs need to be directly incorporated into the general plan, so that it'll be part of the environmental justice element. And so again, just to say that the draft EJ communities map we are presenting to you today is a starting place for conversations with the most impacted communities with the greatest unmet need. And the map offers a point-in-time snapshot of the conditions in the city across topic areas required by SB 1000, but we know it is incomplete and not enough. And the intent of the map is to give us a starting place to identify what's missing. So a little bit about the process to identify, kind of what this process looks like. It's really in 2 buckets. The first is really like developing the draft index, the screening analysis, and the map. And then the other is to take that information and ground truth it with EJ environmental justice communities. So how we created this initial index is in 3 steps. The first step is that we did a landscape of indicators. So we took a look at existing plans the city adopted and looked at all of the indicators that are included in those plans, and then identified indicators based on that list. We then, to understand which indicators are most important in each census tract, the top 25 census tracts impacted within each indicator are tracked. So meaning that we highlighted the top 25 highest scoring census tracts for each indicator. And these tables are included in the appendix. And again, the map that results from these 3 steps is a starting place to ground truth and have conversations with environmental justice communities around what is the map not telling us about conditions on the ground, and also to understand what topics are most important, what topics impact EJ communities the most, and to understand what communities are not being captured in our map that and are currently missing. So again, the process that we took is that we started with CalEnviroScreen data. We layered on 2 different definitions of low-income areas, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Then we added on data related to SB 1000 requirements. So for example, around safe and sanitary homes, and data around food access and civic engagement. And then we also added indicators that we felt were important based on the landscape of plans that we did, as well as the feedback that we received from deeply rooted partners, including as well as some of the existing work that are in the Oakland Equity Indicators Report and OCDAT's Geographic Equity Toolbox. And this is just a snapshot of all of the indicators that are included. So really this index is made up of 51 different indicators. All that you see on your screen, they are categorized, they are grouped into 12 topics. So health is one topic, socioeconomic vulnerability is one topic, air quality is one topic, and then they are categorized into 4 major buckets: race and poverty, environmental health, neighborhood and the built environment, as well as just our sensitive populations. This is another way to, another graphic way to kind of to understand how this index is built. You can see that the 51 indicators is the 51 indicators that are grouped into topics, and the different weights that each category receives. So part of the conversation we want to have with you today is to hear from you around what indicators are most important and least important to be able to identify EJ communities. And one thing I also want to highlight here is that doing this type of analysis allowed us to understand for every census tract in the city, which indicator is so for each, we can identify for each census tract, each census tract, what indicator is impacting that particular community the most. And so this map is a result of the analysis. Again, this is a percentile, so it's comparing census tracts in Oakland to each other. Ranking census tracts against each other within the city. And the census tracts that are hashed in that pink are the top 25 highest scoring census tracts. So we can see that there are some communities in West Oakland that are not being captured as some of the among the top 25 highest scoring according to this set of indicators and data. And now I'll just go a little bit into some of the data that we used in our analysis. We used modeling air quality modeling data from the air 2021, so from last year, from the air district around diesel particulate matter concentrations. And you can see that much of West Oakland is in the top percentage, impacted by diesel particulate matter. We also use the study performed by West Oakland EIP and EDF, the health impact assessment on air quality. And we incorporated the percentage percentage of deaths attributable to air pollution, particularly nitrogen dioxide. And so we can see that much of West Oakland also has some of the highest percentage of annual deaths due to air pollution. This is a map showing the two. So again, we included two measures of low income in the analysis. In the pink, the orange and the pink. And so we can see that there are some areas that in West Oakland that are relatively more affluent and are not showing up as low income based on the definitions of the state. So either being at or below 80% of the statewide median income, or being at or below the state's Housing and Community Development Department definition for low income. But we also did incorporate redlining into the analysis, into the index. And so you can see that even if these communities are not showing up as low income areas, they were redlined areas. And lastly, we this is another measure we included, median household income. So just another measure showing that parts of West Oakland are showing are near the top percentile of median household income. And so some of the questions that we have that we want to discuss with you today are to understand what are the focus SB 1000 focus areas that are most important to West Oakland. Again, which indicators, topics, or categories in the Environmental Justice Index are most and least important to identifying environmental justice communities? And then how do you want to engage with the general plan moving forward? And I'll pass it on to Alicia to close out.
Great. And so thank you so much, Deanna. We are hoping to get some feedback tonight, and we're going to have some small group breakouts to focus on those questions. And I would add that we could also address the elevation of the goal in the breakouts. But Ms. Margaret, I see your hand. Do you want to, can I get through the slide?
I just want to finish.
I just want to invite people to come out to a couple of events. So we have an open house on May 26th, Thursday at the West Oakland Senior Center, and that will be at 6 p.m. And hope that we see some of you there. And to sign up for updates on our project webpage so that you can be informed about various engagement opportunities going forward. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Margaret?
Yeah, my hand is to you. Since this audience is so broad, how do I think we need to do a process of hands of those who live in the impacted area to be asked those questions? Because everybody here is not from West Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
There's only about maybe 8 of us.
Can we get a show of hands?
My hand is up already.
I got you. We know. Do we have other West Oakland residents? Of course.
Or you can use the thumbs up
Yeah.
reaction.
Steering committee member, Albertia, steering committee member, Pastor Carol. So we've just got a few residents. Miss Wanda.
I will just say I want to represent the school children in West Oakland and the Sirius region there, though no, I do not live in West Oakland.
Gotcha. Okay, so
Yeah,
based on that, because we've got breakouts set up and Beth has prepared slides for those breakouts, how do we want to proceed with that, Miss Margaret?
Those who have their hand up in West Oakland should be in a breakout. I don't know what you can do with the rest of the people, but that's why I'm going.
Okay, so let me move some people around.
Why don't, Miss Margaret, would it be okay if we had one group that's all West Oakland residents and then other people can be in different breakout groups?
That's cool. That's good. But
Yeah.
I would prefer to have West Oakland folks in a cluster together.
That
Everybody
totally
else
makes sense.
Give me a sec.
And also, how are you going to distinguish between the two when we do the breakouts?
One more time. How are we going to distinguish?
Okay. When West Oakland people have a breakout,
You're going to be in number one.
Yeah, and also give their information. Then the other groups, how are you characterizing the other groups, other breakout groups?
The other breakout
Concerned
groups,
citizens, members of the audience, what?
we have not categorized them. We are randomly breaking the rest of them out because we would have
But then once the information is gathered,
We can report it out separately, like this is feedback we got from West Oakland residents, because we have a different notes page for each facilitator.
Correct. So we have got Miss Margaret, Pastor Ambrose, Alverdia, and Alicia in one room. And if I could just give me a second, I gotta move everybody else out.
This is Tamara from Gulfport. I'm in West Oakland. I just couldn't find the hands up thing.
Okay, hold on, Tamara. Sorry about that. On the fly. Okay, you were already in one. Nine, 10, 9. Okay, so Alicia, you're in one with Alverdia, Pastor Ambrose, Miss Margaret, and Tamara. Do we have any other West Oakland residents? No.
Wanda said she was going to represent Hoover School.
Okay. Miss Wanda.
I will go where placed.
Thanks for being easy. And see how things work out. We got 6 in the West Oakland group, and we've got 9 in each of the other 3. How about that?
Thank you, Randall.
No problem. Okay, so we're gonna have, if we do 30 minutes, that'll be 49. We wouldn't have enough room. We're gonna do about
Let's do
20
20
minutes.
or 25, yeah.
Let's do 20 minutes. All right. We're gonna come back at about 39 or 40, and we'll use all the rest of the time.
Hey, Randolph, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Because I don't know if the facilitators might find it useful to have the map up. Did you have one version in your deck?
I do. Let me.
Could you put the link in that so they can look at it
Actually, I'm gonna put it in. I'll put it in that slide deck. How about that?
I can also, I'll throw the PDFs that we had emailed out ahead of time that have the map and indicators list.
Okay, and so
I'll
to
put
the-
those in the chat. right
okay,
now.
so I think we have enough people who are familiar with where to find the draft environmental justice communities map. Okay, so that's what we want to talk about.
Yes.
I'm sorry, which
Okay.
map are you talking about? Are you talking about the catchment area?
I just put the PDF in here. It has the list of indicators and the map in one PDF.
Thank you so
So
much.
it's in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, more than enough maps. Okay. We're good to go? All right, great.
Do it.
Have a great conversation.
Hey Randolph, I wasn't placed in a group.
What?
I'm sorry, I switched from my phone to the computer. I hadn't
Oh.
realized that I was going to be facilitating. And so I was like, wait a minute, I should probably be on my computer.
You're stranded. Okay, so Benitez, Beth, and so you
I'm with
are
Kalila.
you're in with Kalila, huh? So where are you here? There you are. You're unassigned. Look at that. Cause you're going to 4. See ya.
Yeah, when they see the kids.
I'm gonna bring a kitty. Oh, where'd she go? Kitty.
Hey, I joined this one because I knew this is where the party was. Right?
Oh, yeah. Julia knew she was gonna steal the show with that one.
Aww.
Too sad to say bye. Okay, say bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure who is a facilitator for this room, but I guess we can go to the first question. The first question is what EJ focus areas, topics or categories in the EJ index are most and least important to identifying EJ communities. I don't know if the index is in the slideshow that you all can, that we can look at to see them again, because there was a lot of them.
But one thing I do remember, if I'm correct, they were saying that the state did not consider certain people disadvantaged communities, but when you redlined them, it included those people. Am I correct in that? Or can no one hear me all of a sudden? Because I hear crickets.
I think it depends on what part of Cal and virus screen you're looking at. I don't know if if the slides are, I'm trying to find the exact slide that Deanna referenced, but I think Cal and virus screen has a different set of indicators because the way that they look at EJ communities, they don't take into consideration race. And our indicators and this index takes that into consideration along with some of the other local data. So it differs based on how much, as you keep adding layers, then you change the map from what Cal and virus screen says.
And
I'm not sure if that was the answer.
And Charles, could you repeat that question for Deanna Benitez, and she may have some additional?
Well, I believe that I heard in the description or definition of what the state considered to be disenfranchised was different than what the redlining district said. The historical redlining?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think from what the other Diana had shared, the way the state defines the initial idea for disadvantaged communities is taking a look at the Cal EnviroScreen data and then the two different ways of looking at income. But Oakland's approach was also taking a look at localized indicators, and Miss Margaret was actually the one that recommended including redlining because of the impact it's had here in Oakland and how it connects with a lot of other things that we have happening in the present.
And I'm sorry, the state looks at Cal EnviroScreen in two different what?
And then two different ways of looking at income. One's looking at statewide median income and another one is looking at county median income.
And the local definition is what?
Let me pull up the slide.
Yeah, because if they look at the median income in Oakland, they'll find a whole lot of disadvantaged people.
Okay, and again, we're on the, okay, I'm just butting in on your facilitation, Kalila and Deanna, but we're looking at which indicators, topics, or categories in the EJ index are most and least important. And so I don't know if it going in here, and I don't know if a process of extraction works better than actually picking what people think is important, picking what's important or picking what is not important and eliminating it.
Probably the other way, the way you just said, picking what's not important. That's easier to probably determine.
Okay. Thank you for that. That makes sense. Does anyone want to start?
They too little to read.
Can you blow that up, Randolph? It's really hard to read.
Oh, this or this, I'm
The
sorry.
table.
Yeah,
that
one. Yeah. No, you're going the wrong way.
How about that? Yeah, that's kind of what I got.
So that's the first thing we learned, that we got to make sure everything big enough for people to read.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of older people with glasses.
No, I heard that. I've got I work on a 45-inch screen, so that's how I handle it. Race and poverty, there's only two. That's 25 per, oh, we lost, I'm sorry, we lost a couple of people. And I may have to go get them. But race and poverty has two people, low income area, statewide median, low income area, HCD. How about we pick one of the long ones? Pollution barrier. Can you see that?
Not really. Those graphics are pretty small.
Kalila, can you see that?
I can see it. I can go through it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. So pollution burden. So I think some of in the graphs that Deanna shared, we had particulate matter was one of them. Particulate PM 2.5. There's also diesel particulate matter, traffic density, and lead exposure. So I guess we can just start with those four. Of those four, do any of them jump out as like ones that we should nix, or we should keep all four of those, I guess?
We should keep all four.
Yeah,
That was from Sony.
it will be kind of hard to kick out one of those.
Yeah. I think some of the other categories are maybe less important, but air quality is such a big issue all around. And yeah, this is Sony.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Also heard Charles. Everybody else sort of feel that way about these 4 categories or these 4 indicators. You can give a thumbs up if you want, or just nod if you're on camera. Okay, cool. So when we're talking about water, so these ones are, I guess, a little bit more, well, to me, more abstract, or actually, no, that's not, I wouldn't say that, but I guess we might not think about them as often. But so toxic releases, counting the number of, facilities in a census tract that release emissions according to, I think AQMD data. Groundwater threats, and impaired water bodies. So those are the ones that we have underwater.
What do they consider impaired water bodies?
Okay, good question.
Yeah, like are they big? Are they small?
I think when they say impaired, they're talking about water quality. That's what I think, but I'm trying to pull up the exact definition in the appendix. Sorry.
I've pulled it up. And sorry about that. This is Diana Benitez again. My internet had gone out, and so I was in the middle of speaking with you all, and I got disconnected. But impaired water bodies, this is a Cal Enviro screen indicator, and they describe it as the contamination of different like streams, rivers, lakes, and coastal waters. And they can impact water bodies in terms of like drinking, swimming, fishing, or impact like the aquatic life that lives there. And so when they specifically say impaired, it doesn't meet water quality standards.
Cool, thank you.
So all three of those then would have a potentially damaging effect on residents and people because it's drinking water, swimming water, things like that. So I don't think we could get rid of any of those.
I don't know. I beg to differ because my understanding is the water that we get from East Bay Mud is tested every 2 years, and it's very high quality water. Now there are some issues because of droughts. And then there's the concern about toxic oil spills because we have so many refineries over near Richmond if there happens to be a toxic spill. But if that's not the case, then just from my understanding with water in our particular area, there's really not a big threat historically. So I'm not really sure if that needs to be a high priority.
Hi, this is Bridget. I don't know. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand because I'm on my cell phone. Okay. So I just wanted to throw out as part of the discussion. We do have water that runs underneath the streets and so forth that runs down to the bay. I know at one point there was concern about the water that may be polluted that comes through the area that goes out to the bay. So even though it is not a direct impact of our drinking water, I think it does impact the bay and potentially our homes if that water is polluted and it gets into basements and things like that. So just something to consider. I don't know how often that happens. I know of the one instance with that Superfund site that's over by where WOCAP is. And there was concern about it migrating down to the bay because everything slopes down and goes to the bay. So I just wanted to throw that in as a discussion point.
Let me just remind us, we probably needed more time, but we were supposed to go back at 40 and it's 7:35. So the We haven't taken anything off the list, so that strategy didn't work as well as I thought it might.
Man, we tried.
Henry,
We
hold
just
on.
we just
Hold
got
on,
so many
Charles.
smart
Hold
people.
on, Charles. Henry, you're on mute. You're on mute, Henry.
Can you hear me now, Randolph?
Yes.
Yeah. So it just, when I look at this table, like every single line seems important. It's hard for me to think about, I would not strike any of them, you know? So, I mean, I realize we don't have much time left, but maybe we flip this upside down, and instead of trying to cut stuff out, we just sort of toss out which do we think are the most important? Because I wouldn't cut out any of these.
Mhm. And then
Yeah, I
others are
think,
going to
Cindy,
be.
that's a good. Oh, I was gonna say that's a good point. I think when we talk about the most important, since these so you can see like each category has the same 25% weight, but each category has a different number of indicators. So race and poverty only has 3 indicators, so that's what's being weighted the heaviest, or at least those 3 indicators are being weighted the heaviest. I guess built environment and sensitive populations seem to have about, I think, 12 and 13 each or something like that. So I guess if we want to talk about most important, is there any category that you think we should weight more? Do you think it's appropriate to have the 25% weight for each category, despite the different number of indicators in there? Or perhaps there's something that you're thinking about that you're not seeing reflected in any of these indicators, that we should be trying to see if we can have data for,
Here's the
or
question.
at least, you know, in as a consideration.
Yeah. I have my question is, why wasn't race and poverty and sensitive populations in some way condensed? And then we'll hear from Joshua.
You did that again in a different way. I didn't quite understand.
So yeah, I like everyone's sentiment that, you know, these are too important to consider cutting. They also kind of intersect in meaningful ways as well. So to cut one is to hamper the other, in my opinion. So if we're going to look at it with a different lens and kind of prioritize them, I think the one category for sure that I would boost in terms of percentage would be the pollution burden piece, because if we're talking about environmental justice indicators, that is the crux of it all, is the, you know, disproportionate burden, pollution burden, air, water, soil, et cetera, that those communities face. So I would boost that up at least 5% or more, just to get the conversation started.
What do you think about that?
Thanks for that.
I agree, certainly. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And then if I can just pick, oh, I'm sorry. Can I?
No, go ahead.
Okay, piggyback off of what Joshua was saying. I really see health as a result of some of those pollution burdens. And so not necessarily that whole sensitive populations category, but, and I agree with you, Randolph, that socioeconomic probably should be with race and poverty, and health should be its own category, because a lot of that is a direct result of the pollution burden that certain communities are overburdened with.
For that, that's those are great suggestions, Sunny and Joshua. I think that's definitely something that we can take back to our consultant and have them, you know, whatever, like run the analysis to see how the maps change, if they do change drastically with the different weights or with rearranging the categories a bit. Yeah. I know we're kind of running up.
Yeah, we're gonna take a couple of extra minutes to get a little bit more work in, and I'll send them a message on that. But this last comment was race and poverty and sensitive populations, socioeconomic could be condensed and health be its own category. And then we've got boost pollution burden by at least 5%.
Yes, that's what I heard as well. I guess one thing if anyone has any other comments, please feel free. But I think one thing that I was thinking about is the built environment category. I think this one's might be the most sort of disparate in terms of the different types of indicators that are in here. You have things about food, transportation, housing, and neighborhood. And so do you think these are hitting the marks? We have, for food, we have SNAP food assistance, low food access. For transportation, we have road safety, vehicle mobility, active commutes, transit access. Housing, we have house heating, housing habitability, overcrowding, housing burden, evictions, redlining. I think I've heard redlining is an important one. For neighborhood, we have community facilities, tree canopy coverage, park access, public safety, illegal dumping. Are those all standing out to you as appropriate for this category? And the weighting for this category makes sense. If we do bump pollution burden up, we would have to bump one down. So will we bump down this category perhaps? I'm just sort of throwing out ideas here, but let me know what y'all think.
Like, let me just throw my 2 cents in there. And I think a lot of this depends on how people frame some of these issues. Like for me, health and nutrition goes together, right? So I would have put that up there. And then there was one other thing. But yeah, so I guess it just depends on, kind of what framework that you're, kind of adopting for this. So like, why would SNAP food assistance and low food access be part of built environment? Are we saying that there aren't enough food outlets or food facilities as a part of the built environment to access? And then again, if food is nutrition, like health and nutrition is typically like kind of a grouping, at least in some.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I can see that reasoning. I can't tell you the details of how that category came together, but I think the low food access is definitely a geography category about, which neighborhoods where people are within walking distance of grocery stores and things like that. The SNAP food assistance is more of like a health or socioeconomic consideration, I would think. But yeah, I think those are suggestions we can bring back for sure.
And I know my internet's been funky, so I've been coming in and out, but I don't know if I've heard Julia or Helena add anything. So if you would like to share some of your thoughts before we go, that would be awesome.
Hi, sorry, I just kind of found my camera and button. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input as well. I think just because I am at the California Air Resources Board, air quality would be the top priority for us, and I'm in the enforcement division, so anything to do with the particulate matter and the diesel particulate matter, I would want to especially elevate. And I agree with the sort of consolidating some of the indicators within the sensitive populations along with the race and poverty category. Yeah.
Okay, Julie, you want to get in there before we head back?
Yeah, I would agree with everything everyone has said. I mean, I think weighting pollution burden a bit higher, and yeah, I mean, I think all of these indicators are important. The one thing that kind of sticks out to me, maybe under the climate change, is maybe expanding those indicators a bit. Instead of like urban heat island, it could be like heat and flood vulnerability. Just a bit more expansive of an indicator under climate change. But yeah, I agree with what everybody else has said.
Expand climate change indicators. Okay, does somebody want to report these back? We are, well, what we did was, oh, is that you? Okay. Okay, does somebody want to report those back? One of our, either Kalila or Deanna? Yes? Okay,
I can do it.
great. All right, we're gonna go back. All right, thank you all. We've got 115 seconds.
What'd you do, Randolph? Just move our breakout to the main room? It's the same cast of characters, man.
It is, yeah. We've still got 93 seconds, so we can talk amongst ourselves for 93 seconds. And you are in, I saw somebody typing in the doc, so if we have any additional comments, we've still got 79 seconds before we get back to the.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll just say, while we have 80 seconds, we didn't talk about the other question about how you all would like to continue to engage with the general plan going forward. I don't know if you all are on a listserv and get the emails about the events, or when new documents are released, or when there are, new website updates, but are there different sort of events or online platforms you want to see to review stuff or give feedback or what have you, or? Or what, I guess.
Like emails tend to work for me. Like they can become a bit much, just as experience with the downtown plan. It can really become a bit much, and it's hard to sort out, but that is the easiest way to communicate with folks.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, all, welcome back. We went over a little because there's just a lot to do. So let's actually just go right in, because we've got about 11 minutes scheduled. We may go over just a little bit. I'll just tell you that. And anybody who wants to stick around and have a conversation, but let's just start with our group. Deanna and Kalila.
Sure, I can get us started. So we go to the right slide. We initially started going down the list and had a little bit of trouble trying to remove things because everything seemed important and everything is important. And so then we decided to reframe the question and took a look at the weighting and thought that pollution burden is something that should be more than 25%. And so we discussed maybe like a 5% boost with particular importance to air quality. As we were looking at the categories, we were noting that things like race and poverty and socioeconomic undersensitive populations are kind of similar, so they could be condensed. also that health could be pulled out as its own category and connected with food and nutrition. There was also mention that the climate change, there's currently just 2 indicators that could be expanded to look more at overall heat and overall flood. And then, yeah, then there was like a few questions and things. And I don't know if Kalila, if you want to add anything else that I may have missed.
Cool. Thanks. I think you got a lot of it. I think one thing we heard was that perhaps the indicators could be rearranged a little bit. So for example, the race census, race and income category only has 3 indicators. So those are getting a lot of weight. So perhaps bringing some of the indicators in the socioeconomic category into that race and income category to more evenly distribute the weight of those indicators, as well as bumping up the weight on the pollution burden category to at least 5%. And then thinking about how some of the other indicators are structured. For example, we have food in the built environment, but it seems like at least one of those food indicators is more of a socioeconomic category. So I think being more, taking a closer look at how things are organized and grouped and weighted. I think the overall consensus was that all the indicators that are there are needed. We shouldn't cut any, but just consider, a bit of reorganization. Hopefully that's, yeah. If anyone else wants to add anything, please feel free.
Let's actually move to our West Oakland group. Alicia, Miss Margaret.
Alicia got the questions, the answers.
Okay, so regarding sort of the index, one of the comments that came up was that there should be an account of where heavy industry is located, particularly heavy industry that is adjacent to residential uses. And so, and I think the other, kind of recommendations that came up also similarly dealt with the built environment. So another one was that there should be a noise indicator from trucks that come out of the post office and, that drive to other businesses in the West Oakland community.
And BART.
And BART and, vehicle traffic in general too. And the other thing was, could we add some kind of in the sensitive population, and I can't remember offhand if it's already there, but I guess I could look at the slide, whether or not the unhoused is accounted for in the in our index. So particularly because of the the relatively low weighting or relatively low score of the area near Prescott, where there's hundreds of unhoused residents. So those were some of the things that came out of the the review of the index. Is that do we stop there now, or should I go into the other?
How about you?
And I think that this came up around the EJ focus areas, and there was a real kind of shocked feeling that schools weren't listed, and then we kind of explored it a little more and said that that they maybe if we had some kind of a subcategory for the the public facilities, but really pulling out schools because they have concentrations of children. And then I think there was another theme, which was that all of these focus area topics are very interrelated. And then I think the other thing was the role that gentrification is playing in West Oakland and Oakland, and that there was even the kind of the icons of that focus group, of the environmental justice focus areas showed a white woman jogging, and just was triggering. And who are we planning for? So I think that that's something to consider. The planning team should really consider. And again, just sort of the education and needing not only for children, but for also for adults, and the civic engagement piece. So again, it was like everything is very important, but there were some things that kind of were talked about a little more. Thank you. Anything, does anyone want to add or clarify?
Great. Deanna?
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Ambrose. Did want to add, along with the schools and the public facilities, that there are privately held facilities, houses of worship and stuff like that, that really need a lot of work and focus. And we think that because of the historic, the history of redlining, the whole nine, that we ought to be able to take a look at those privately held spaces that were held by the community to make sure we've got clean air, clean water, retrofits, and the like.
All right, thanks. We can't hear you, Deanna.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, let me share my screen briefly. So regarding the question of which indicators, topics, or categories in the EJ index are most and least important in identifying EJ communities, we really, there were some couple of questions around like looking at how other cities are approaching this process. There's and then really a question around what is the ground truthing process going to look like? We talked about the importance of uplifting data, local data that has been gathered through multiple partnerships and research and existing work through WOCAP, and also taking a look at East Oakland, kind of the East Oakland AB 617 process. The group also discussed the importance of race and poverty and really uplifting pollution burden as some of the most important categories to lift up in the index. And really this question around how do we measure resilience, and including, identifying, being able to include resilience within the index. And so we started to discuss around what that could look like. And then we had I thought my notes disappeared, but there was a question around engaging with the general plan. Our group really felt like, since there are representatives from different agencies, from Caltrans, from Alameda County Public Health, that engaging could look like bringing technical expertise, data, and really being a partner, like bringing resources to engage, and also that really the part of the engagement could look like identifying the multiple focus, and maybe Shayna, you can chime in and say this better than I can, but identifying those the strategies that have multiple multiple focus areas. I think Shayna can probably say that better.
Yeah, well, I was more talking about compounding harms, multiple overlapping harms, but yeah, compounding benefits as well. And the example that came up was vegetated buffers, which have multiple benefits of filtering air pollution, mitigating stormwater, potentially floodwaters, multiple benefits. So, identifying, using indicators that would, when pooled together, be more likely to yield direct investment in the communities that need the investments the most. Is that kind of what you were wanting me to get at?
Yes, thanks, Shayna.
Sure.
And that's our summary.
Great. Beth?
Great. I wanted to share Deanna, can you pull up your screen and go to slide 15, because I don't have screen share access. So we first were talking about how about the income indicator, and maybe we need to lower the weight. We also discussed, like Alicia's group, that the homeless population. there were questions for the city that I obviously couldn't answer about how, if the qualitative and ground truthing information would be added in the index or just added as, you know, criteria for the map, so separate from the index. And then pollution burden, some people thought should be weighted closer to 50%. There could also be a qualitative indicator related to historic environmental burdens. There was a question about what the Heath Island indicator included. Is it only trees or not? We think it's more than just trees, but we're not sure. We also, like one or two of the other groups, thought noise could be a good indicator there. Yeah, there was a question about sea level rise, and it is in there, and some parts of West Oakland are going to be at risk. Justice issue that more research is being done on related to exposure to microplastics from microplastic pollution from road dust and tire particles, and that potentially a proxy indicator could be adding in residents living in proximity to high volume roadways, because currently we have like PM 2.5, but we don't actually have like just being near a high volume roadway. There was discussion about whether BACMED's enforcement data could be helpful, but because it's based on who's reporting the data, it might be too biased. And then we noticed that there's an overcrowding indicator, but it uses the 1 person per household instead of the 1.5 person cut point. And in a lot of cultures, having, you know, more than 1 person in the room is a positive thing, because there's like multi-generational families or just large families, and it's not necessarily negatively impacting their health. General, like just proximity to the port could be an indicator. And there was another, oh, I don't know who put this in, population displacement rate. I guess it's sort of related to gentrification. I don't know if anyone else from my group wants to add, clarify things I said.
I can add on that displacement when they build Mandela, the Mandela housing development up here on 7th and 7th and Mark 7th and Mandela, that they reduced the density of affordable housing units. So that also contributes to the displacement.
Yeah.
And then they didn't replace them 1-to-1 back. And and then also none of the affordable housing, many of the new affordable housing units that are built are not built for families of 4 or more.
Oh.
So the population of displacement also contributes to those 2 things.
Right.
And overcrowding.
Great, thanks. Beth,
That's it.
That's a wrap?
We just focused on the index the whole time.
Okay, so we're just about 4 minutes over. That was a robust conversation. The one thing that we didn't get to, that we started getting to when we popped back into the main group, was how the city would like us to engage. Actually, I did have a question, and it was really based on something that Alicia said, like, how is the community engagement, or is there anybody to do a cultural competency check as you are kind of presenting information such that there is not those triggers? Because somebody should have caught that, right? Planning groups do that all the time when they show you the look of the future, and nobody in the rendering looks like, you know, like literally nobody, and nobody in the room, you know, tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Sal, there's no Black people here." You know what I mean? And so I'm just trying to figure out, like, how is that moving forward? How do you avoid that? Because when you do roll this out, it's incredible information, but you're going to lose part of your audience if there is nobody there doing, a cultural competency check.
And I would like to add, even the technical assistant staff that's working with the city on this, there's no Black people.
Yeah, so we're talking about, and that's just, this isn't the only place that it happens, but if we're talking about impacted people and there's no firsthand account from impacted people, then it's very difficult to produce something that is going to be resonant and very easy to, kind of produce a report full of triggers. So that was just a question. So the other question that we started talking about was how we can kind of, one, as people watching the process, stay updated, and then also to continue to provide the various teams working on this project, with information and kind of reciprocating information. That was halfway a question.
Yeah, it was the second half, Randolph.
Yeah, you can answer whichever half you want. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the cultural competency, that we definitely need that filter, and I appreciate Reverend Carol for bringing it up, and you, Randolph, for really underscoring it. And then the second thing you were saying, I didn't quite catch it. Did anyone else on our team catch what he was saying there? I'm sorry.
About the input? We started talking about, I think the question was how you would like to engage with the general plan planning efforts. And
so are you asking the steering committee, or are you asking the city how we would like to engage?
So both
that was the question. And so I'm asking of the people on here, if you have any additional ideas of how you would like to stay engaged in this process. And hopefully that will be helpful to you moving forward. All right. All right, nobody has any. Oh.
Well, again, just a thought. And again, I mean, a part of it, the number of individuals from West Oakland, and a part of I think what I heard in the meeting is just the notion of recruitment of our bandwidth to again. So again, you've got people who are already disenfranchised, who don't have the kind of time to give either, right, to these pieces, but I guess the onus is on us to continue to do the work of recruitment to get up to make sure we're up to speed in the room. So I was thinking again of our faith communities, places in the communities to tap that, but we'll have to kind of come back and see how recruitment goes.
And Anna, there's a question from Anna. Will there be other phases of the plan process where the city will come back to this body?
Yes, we will definitely come back. I think maybe when we are at the phase of reporting out on some of the feedback, we'd like to come back and, kind of do a little, check of the way that we are, revising the environmental community screen. But, yeah, so we definitely will, and we'll come back when it is, right for the phase of the planning process.
I'm sorry, and I think I know we're at time, but just kind of, what are we going to do with the plan, the actionable piece or the resources with the plan. So as we talk about the fact that this plan is here, how do we, enact people? Like, what are we actually talking about? Are we just talking about information, or what's the hope that the city is going to actually actualize things?
From my perspective, I would say that we need community to support the ambitious goals to achieve environmental justice in Oakland. And we can't do it ourselves. We can't do it even with the deeply rooted team. We need community to get out there, tell your council members, come out and support these ambitious plans. So I think it's kind of, we're developing our allies right now. So there's development of allies, but yeah, I mean, ultimately it will be a policy document, but it will also have implementing actions. And we can talk about that next time. How do we, or maybe we'll come back twice, once to just kind of check the environmental justice screen, and then like in October. So maybe coming back in August to talk about the EJ screen and the rest of the feedback we got and what we're planning to do. And then in October to look at the actual draft of the element. And I hope that answered your question.
It does, yes.
And we will let folks go and tell what is the mechanism for engaging with deeply rooted, as they should be the kind of the translator from a public education kind of lens. Like
that's Deanna.
Yeah. Our partners have been holding pop-up events throughout. We've had House Full of Black Women hosting porch side chats in people's backyards in the front of their houses in West Oakland. We've had, for example, the Oakland Asian Cultural Center having tabling at their events. And so we're having a lot of in-person engagement where we're doing deep listening and conversations, 5 to 8 minute interviews to really hear what folks have to share. And so that's the approach we've been doing. And as we're updating to shift to start getting some of the feedback, particularly on the maps. And so you can find our engagement activities on the city's website. We're constantly updating them.
Okay.
And yeah.
Would love to see some of that done in our houses of worship. That'd be great.
And I've seen some of those at the Malanga Cascalord Center and other places like that at Black Cultural Zone. And are they able to translate some of the technical kind of policy related information that we would hear from either the consultant or from the city?
I'd also suggest the schools, and especially the high schools, right? We say that we want to hear the voices of youth, and then we don't get it.
Sorry, we don't have a youth plan yet. We don't have a youth staff person yet. Wanda, I'm not to make excuses, but we don't have that capacity yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was more for the outreach team, but we're working on that too.
And I can say on the deeply rooted, and we just opened up a deeply rooted youth fellowship. And so we're going to be recruiting 20 youth, between high school students up until their early 20s. And we're going to be developing outreach and engagement and a lot of hands-on training. And Urban Strategies Council has been working on this. And it was actually something that they developed with the Youth Advisory Council and Prescott Revis. And so we have released that. And so at the end of this call, I'm going to share that information with Beth and Randolph so they can share it with you all so we can have as many youth as possible apply. So thank you for bringing that up. I had it on my
Deanna.
list,
So
but I had
cool.
forgotten to mention.
Awesome. Rest in peace, Prescott Revis.
Yeah.
All right. So we are exactly a quarter an hour over 15 minutes. And we're not going to belabor this, but this was great. Great information, great sharing. We're going to turn these notes around in the next couple of weeks, get all the information back to you, and you will be given kind of next steps. So thank you all for your participation. Thanks to our new steering committee members, Pastor Ambrose, Bridget, and we will see you next month.
Bye, everyone.
Awesome.
Bye.
Peace.
Good
Hey,
evening.
thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Happy Mother's Day to all who celebrate.
Happy Mother's Day.
All right, thank y'all.
Happy Mother's Day.